Today's case arises at the intersection of two very important Fourth Amendment principles. First, the automobile exception, which allows police officers to search an automobile if they have probable cause to believe that it contains incriminating evidence. And they can do this without a warrant. Thus, it is called an exception to the warrant requirement under the Fourth Amendment. Automobile exception. And the second principle is that your home gets the most protection under the Fourth Amendment. It is explicitly listed in the Fourth Amendment. But even more than that, we have what's called curtilage, an area immediately surrounding your home and intimately connected to your home gets the same protection. So the question becomes, can an officer walk up to the curtilage and search the vehicle under the automobile exception? And when I say search, I don't even mean an extensive search inside the vehicle, but something more simple than that. Can an officer come up to the curtilage and look at the vehicle's vehicle identification number, VIN number, to see if the vehicle is stolen? And before we go on and answer that question, I want to thank you for watching me here on YouTube. If you're new to the LAWSTACHE channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to the podcast version of this recording on Audible or Spotify, please give my podcast a 5-star review rating. And finally, if you want to support this channel, consider going to LAWSTACHE.com and check out some of the merch, including the Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirts. Thanks for watching.
Quick message from LAWSTACHE. Are you charged with a crime? Or do you want to know your rights if stopped by police? Watch California attorney Anton Vieltsin discuss legal cases from the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and California state courts on the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. Anton has handled hundreds of federal and state criminal cases, has an in-depth knowledge of the law, and has the best mustache ever. Subscribe to the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. That's LAWSTACHE.
Today we're discussing a Supreme Court case, Collins versus Virginia. But first, let me give you some factual background. An officer observed a rider on a black and orange motorcycle commit a traffic infraction. He tried to pull him over, but the guy fled. A week later, a different police officer saw a black and orange motorcycle and the rider going well above the speed limit. He then again tried to pull him over, but the guy fled. Upset at their bad luck, the two officers arrive at their headquarters, they exchange some notes, and they figure out that this black and orange motorcycle must be the same, and it also has an extended frame. One of the officers begins to investigate online, and he sees that Mr. Collins has a picture of that motorcycle on his Facebook profile. The motorcycle is parked on the driveway. The officer does some digging around and figures out where this motorcycle must be parked. He drives over to the house, parks his car, and sees that a motorcycle is parked almost at the exact same location on the driveway, but it is covered with a white tarp. The officer walks on the driveway up to the motorcycle, lifts the white tarp, and looks at the license plate and the VIN number. And he figures out that this motorcycle is stolen. The officer then goes back to his car, sits around, and waits for Mr. Collins to arrive. Mr. Collins gets home and gets arrested for receiving stolen property. Now, Mr. Collins challenges his conviction. This case actually goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. Mr. Collins says that his Fourth Amendment rights were violated when the officer, uninvited and without a warrant, walked up to his driveway, up to the motorcycle, without a warrant. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Remember, the Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures, and generally speaking, officers need to have a warrant before they conduct a search. Now, the officers here rely on what's called automobile exception. Under this exception, officers may search a vehicle if they have probable cause to believe that incriminating evidence will be found. And this is without a warrant. Thus, it is called an exception to the warrant requirement under the Fourth Amendment. Here, the officers said that they had probable cause to believe that this vehicle, this motorcycle, was stolen. And thus, they were allowed to search. And again, I don't mean an extensive search, by lifting the tarp to look at the VIN number. That is your first principle here. The automobile exception allows officers to search a vehicle without a warrant as long as they have probable cause. But this comes at the intersection of the second principle, the fact that your home gets the most protection, and curtilage also gets that protection. So now let's discuss curtilage. Like the automobile exception, the Fourth Amendment's protection of curtilage has long been black letter law. When it comes to the Fourth Amendment, the home is first among equals. At the amendment's very core stands the right of the man to retreat into his own home and there be free from unreasonable governmental intrusions. To give full practical effect to this right, the court considers curtilage, that is, the area immediately surrounding and associating with the home, to be part of the home itself for Fourth Amendment purposes. The protection afforded the curtilage is essentially a protection of familial and personal privacy in an area intimately linked to the home, both physically and psychologically, where privacy expectations are most heightened. Now that we understand the existing law, the question is whether the automobile exception justifies an invasion of the curtilage. Or if we put it more simply, can a police officer, uninvited and without a warrant, walk up the curtilage, walk up the driveway, and search the motorcycle by lifting the tarp or simply looking at the VIN number to see whether it's stolen? And here's what the court says.
The scope of the automobile exception extends no further than the automobile itself. It does not give an officer the right to enter a home or its curtilage to access a vehicle without a warrant. The court has similarly declined to expand the scope of other exceptions to the warrant requirement, and that logic applies equally well here. Under the plain view doctrine, an officer must have a lawful right of access to any contraband he discovers in plain view in order to seize it without a warrant. Likewise, although warrantless arrests in public places are valid, an officer generally may not enter a home to make an arrest without a warrant. So too, an officer must have a lawful right of access to a vehicle in order to search it pursuant to the automobile exception. The automobile exception itself does not afford that necessary right of access because the rationales underlying it take account only of the balance between the intrusion of an individual's Fourth Amendment interest in his vehicle and the government's interest in an expedient search of that vehicle. They do not account for the distinct privacy interest in one's home or curtilage.
So no, the police officers cannot violate the Fourth Amendment and walk up the curtilage of the home without a warrant in order to invoke the automobile exception. They have to have a legal access to the vehicle before the automobile exception applies. But if you notice, the court mentioned the plain view doctrine. In this case, if the motorcycle would have not been covered with a tarp and the police officer could see the license plate of the motorcycle from the street, he would not be violating anything. If he's standing in a lawful spot, meaning from the sidewalk, and he can see the incriminating evidence, meaning that the license plate confirms that the motorcycle is stolen, the Fourth Amendment does not protect the individual because the plain view doctrine applies. If the public can see it, so can the police. So hopefully this video shows you the interaction between the automobile exception, the plain view doctrine, and of course the curtilage, which gets the most protection just like your home under the Fourth Amendment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the LAWSTACHE channel, please subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast version of this recording on Audible or Spotify, please give my podcast a 5-star rating. And finally, if you want to support this channel, consider going to LAWSTACHE.com and check out some of the merch, including the Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirts, hats, stickers, and some other items. Thanks for watching.